Welcome to Autism Insights. I'm Bill Locke, your host, father of a 29-year-old with autism and a volunteer with Autism Calgary.
Having repetitive behavior, so they may have associated problems like OCD, ADHD, anxiety in a way.
Life can be like a baseball game. We sometimes get a curveball thrown our way, sometimes a lot of curveballs. It might mean we strike out, but then there's another inning and then another. The game's not over. One of my good friends was a software scientist with great professional prospects ahead of him. Then a curveball was thrown, actually two curveballs. Two of his children were diagnosed with autism. He and his wife reinvented their family life, and he stayed at home to care for the boys. Today, he is Director of Autism Calgary. Meet Lyndon Parakin.
If I sort of reflect and think about being a father of children with autism, I think that I really had to adjust my expectations on what that would be. My own father was very hands-on and taught me to do many things. He was a tradesman. I dreamed of building things with my kids. I wanted to build a house with my children, like I had built a cottage with my father. I wasn't able to do those things with my sons. It's been a long journey to try and find really exciting ways and build some happy memories in that, knowing you can't do it the way that you thought you learned how to do it. One of the things that really inspired me and made me feel successful in that is I became a scout leader. There was at least 7 years where I was both in Beavers, Cubs, and Scouts. My weekends were full of camping trips. And I remember sort of embedding that into intervention. One of my proud things is how we sort of adapted our physical therapy interventions with John to make it so that he could do a river trip. He's fascinated and loves rivers. We spent 2 years supporting him on a paper route, adding extra weights to his backpack. And we went on a 2-week river trip down the Red Deer River, down to Dinosaur Provincial Park, sleeping on the river bank. He was in heaven. Really special memories for me in doing that. Another thing, the final trip in scouting, when we sort of retired from the program, Liam and John, my 2 boys with autism, went with me down to the Florida Keys. And we were on a schooner ship. And we took them snorkeling. Sometimes you're so involved, sometimes you often have to discipline yourself to sit back. And I was trying to get Liam to go in and go snorkeling to look at the fish on the reef because I knew how much he would love it. But it's so much anxiety about fear, about getting into the water. I had to discipline myself, sit back and let sort of some of the friends as other leaders that have sort of followed me step in. And they were able to get him in there. And I think we ended up 8 hours on the reef when we were only planning 3 hours because we couldn't get Liam out of the water. So
that's a great story.
It's an adjustment in your career and it's an adjustment in your life in what your expectations are being a father. In hindsight, in reflection, I remember sitting on parent-teacher councils. We all want to advocate and do our best. I don't know how many of us parents have said, okay, well, I'll be on the parent council. I remember sitting back and looking at other parents writing, intense and emotional letters about the government offering more money to reduce classroom sizes. And they were furious their child had to have a new teacher in a smaller classroom. And I remember thinking they were so consumed. They And I sort of reflected on how consumed I am when I advocate for my children, and realized, some of this is just being a dad, right? So sometimes we forget the part that's being consumed about autism, the part that's being consumed about just being, a father wanting to do your best, or a parent wanting to do your best.
Great way to cap it off. And
so there you go. I threw in a few personal stories.
Very good. Maureen Bennie began her career as a classical musician. Then her two children were diagnosed with autism. We'll hear her story in a future episode, but for now, Maureen has some nuggets of wisdom.
Well, I think for sure with exercise, it's like anything else, you have to put it down in your schedule. You put it in your day timer, and either that be you're going to set aside that time to do an online class, even if it's like something that you just look at on YouTube, but you've got to put it in the schedule. If it's not written down, you'll always have something else that comes in the way, and you'll say, oh, don't have time to do that today. Now, I think if you're new to moving and you want to get moving, you have to start with just little steps, because this is the big thing why, for example, New Year's resolutions fail, is that people do these huge goals that are so unattainable and are so daunting that they sort of fall off the wagon. So a little step would be something like, I'm going to walk to the corner store to pick up that carton of milk rather than driving. Or, I'm going to walk over to the library to drop my books off today, or walking the dog. Or even as a family, you can create a new routine. Like when the weather is nicer, you could say, after dinner, 3 times a week, we're just going to go over to the local playground and shoot some basketball hoops. So it's just, again, making a small change. You could decide, like, once a month on a Sunday, we're going to do a nature walk, or while it's still cold like this, we're going to try and get out and skate twice a month on one of the outdoor rinks, right? Or one of the outdoor lakes, or just something small. I think it's also good to introduce body breaks throughout the day. And because again, some people will say, I don't have an hour is too long, or, okay, well, let's take a 10-minute body break, particularly if you've been on the computer a lot. And, I'm just going to do 10 minutes of stretching, throw your yoga mat down and do it. Or I've got a set of weights. I'm going to take, 5 to 10 minutes, and I'm going to do, 20 repetitions of a particular cycle in a weight cycle. Maybe it's about doing Wii Fit. Maybe it's just doing a little jogging on the spot. So these little body breaks you can take throughout the day, and you'd be surprised, 5 and 10 minutes really adds up, and you'll feel a lot better too, because when you take that body break and you sit it down again, your level of focus will be that much greater.
How do you build a good team? Sometimes a father and son team can be a natural fit. Meet Dr. Roger Thomas, a doctor, professor, and medical researcher. His son Bennett is on the autism spectrum, and Bennett himself is also highly accomplished with his own set of credentials. Over the years, they have collaborated on a number of research projects. I've really been looking forward to talking to you. Before we get into the content of it, though, I'd just like to have the viewers know a little bit more about you. Dr. Thomas, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
So I'm an emeritus professor of family medicine at the University of Calgary. I have worked in 5 different countries. I was a medical missionary in Malawi, Africa with Bennett for 3.5 years. I've taught at the University of East Carolina, Newfoundland University, where the Memorial, where I was chair, University of Ottawa. I taught at the University of Guelph, and now I'm at Calgary, which I thoroughly enjoy. So my research interests are in child development, autism, Tourette syndrome, injuries in sports, responses to vaccine, medications for seniors, adverse responses to medications for seniors, inappropriate medications for seniors, and personalized medicine, which is looking at how we metabolize medicine using our genome.
I am an independent researcher and I have ASD.
Well, thank you, Bennett. That's very good.
And it also has a BA magna cum laude from the University of Ottawa in German and French. He also has a master's in international journalism from City University of London. And he also has a degree from SAIT in library science and journalism. Bennett, would you comment on what it is?
Oh yeah, it's a library information technology diploma. The emphasis is on information technology.
Very good. And I understand that the two of you have teamed up on a number of different research projects and conferences.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we've done systematic reviews together on injuries in sports. And what else have we done, Bennett?
Let me think. Research on autism as well.
Yes, very good. So you're quite a team.
Indeed.
The Thomas team. I'd like to introduce Dr. Joel Christie, who has a long history of public service. In this episode, he shares some very practical advice about how to deal with social isolation during the pandemic.
Well, particularly for seniors, because the older you get, because literally your social network dies out. A spouse may die, adult children move away, your neighbors are getting older, you may be in a different neighborhood now. So you become more and more isolated. And social isolation leads to all kinds of problems. It can, physical health, depression, misuse of substances to get through. So the pandemic has resulted in higher levels of stress and higher alcohol and drug addictions, it seems, as well. And suicides are going up too. You know, I mean, there's some real issues here. And with lack of jobs now, people losing their jobs, there can be real economic pressures put on them, adding onto the stresses from the fear of catching COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to me, social isolation can be determined by the number of people you have in your network. Okay, people that you can call on for help, people that will call on you to help. Because one way of dealing with social isolation is helping others and volunteering to help others. Although now it's harder to do, particularly for seniors if they're vulnerable to out of their homes. But so the number of roles you have and the people you're connected with and the amount of counter roles, such as being a grandfather or a grandmother, not only having sons or daughters, but it's the amount of people that you are connected with socially. Today, there is technology like using iPads and telephones and tablets to stay in touch so that you can see people, FaceTiming, Skyping, Zooming like this, that can help overcome some of this isolation. But there's nothing like getting outside, going for a walk, or being healthy. Get your mask on, protect properly, and get out and get the sunshine in your face to do something. The other thing that's important is having something to do, like making a list for what you want to do for the day. So you get up to knowing you're going to do something, have a list, and start following it so that there's something concrete that you said, geez, I got to get up and do this, rather than sitting back and watching TV or whatever all the time.
That's it for today. Join us again for Autism Insights. I'm your host, Bill Locke.